Chapter 9. The Last World War. 250 years before the present day, this planet belonged to nations. Seen from orbit, its continents carried green across every latitude, and its cities glowed along the coastlines like strings of light. It was a living world. Forests ran unbroken for thousands of kilometres. Rivers fed open farmland, and oceans drove weather that arrived as rain and left as harvest. Billions lived under open sky. Land still grew food in the open, water still fell clean, and the horizon was something a child could walk toward. Their cities spread outward rather than upward, dense centres thinning into farmland, linked by trade routes that crossed every border. Their technology was advanced and accelerating. Automated industry, global networks, early neural interfaces, platforms in orbit. It was the peak of a civilization, and it did not feel like an ending. But the peak was burning resources faster than the world could replace them, and peace did not hold. The climate turned first. Decades of extraction and emission destabilized it. Seasons slipped, storms strengthened, droughts stretched across whole regions, and harvests began to fail. Shortages followed the weather. Water, food, fuel, and minerals ran thin. Access to them became policy, and rationing lists decided who stood in which line. Nations hardened under the pressure. Governments turned autocratic one election at a time, borders militarized, and ideological and religious fractures widened into permanent hostility between blocs. For close to 2 decades, the blocs traded covert strikes, sabotage, assassinations, engineered outages, limited border clashes. Each operation was deniable, and each one was answered. The wild world burned in the background of every broadcast. Forests in flame across whole mountain ranges, herds fleeing ahead of the smoke. Each incident wore away trust until no agreement could hold. When open war came, it came everywhere at once. Alliances pulled every continent into the fighting, and within a season, there was no neutral ground left on the planet. It was fought with everything the civilization had built. Automated fleets in the skies, machine armies on the ground, strikes launched from orbit onto cities that had no warning. Cities that had stood for centuries were emptied, burned, or abandoned in retreat. The trade routes that once crossed every border now carried columns of refugees. Nature stood in the crossfire. Forest systems that had taken 10,000 years to grow were gone in a week of firestorms, and the animals that survived fled into lands that could not hold them. Then the arsenals opened. Weapons of mass destruction rendered entire regions uninhabitable in hours, and the maps that had started the war stopped describing anything real. By the end, the vast majority of the planet's population was dead or dying. The war did not end with a treaty. It ended when there was nothing left to take. The fires outlived the fighting. Firestorms swept the last standing forests, and ash fields settled over the croplands until the ground itself went grey. Chemical lakes pooled in the lowlands. Smog layers thickened until noon arrived as brown dusk, and the sun became something remembered rather than seen. The atmosphere itself became a casualty. Air that punished breathing. Rain that stripped whatever it touched. Winds that carried contamination from one dead region to the next. The surface could no longer support ordinary life at scale. What had been the loudest world in its system went quiet, one region at a time. Years before the terminal phase, elite groups had stopped preparing for victory and started preparing for what would come after. While the blocs armed their borders, these groups dug. Deep installations were cut into a geologically stable mountain ridge. Bedrock for anchoring, geothermal heat for power, narrow approaches for defense. They were stocked for decades, and their existence was never announced. The final strike settled the question. A massive fallout event spread through the upper atmosphere. Skies darkened planet-wide, and surface temperatures began to fall. The window for survival above ground closed, the bunkers sealed. Entry favored political leadership, corporate and financial management, key defense and technical staff, and their dependents, checked against lists written long before the end. The doors closed on everyone else. Inside, numbering in the low millions, waited the population that would one day build Ad Karun. Outside, the old world ended.